Regarding my gap year plans, the pandemic was both a blessing and a curse. Hey there, my name is Emiliano, and I guess you could say that I'm a first year medical student at Humanitas University. Wow, that sounds weird to me, especially because 18 months ago, which was the length of my gap year, I had no idea what I wanted to study. That's one of the topics we're going to talk about today when we compare what I wanted my gap year to look like versus what it actually looked like. Right now, I'm actually in quarantine for a few more days before I actually get to start studying medicine. But it wasn't always like this. This wasn't always my plan. If you had asked me a year ago what I wanted to study, my answer would have probably been, I don't know, anything but medicine though. So you see, when I graduated high school, I knew one thing. And that was that I needed to take a gap year because I had no idea what I wanted to study. So if I had one goal for my gap year, was that I needed to find what I wanted to study and where and get in. Apart from that, I had no other real goals and I could plan the rest of my year accordingly. So apart from that one goal that I had divided my planned gap year into two 6-month sections. The first section from July, which is when I graduated, to December, I wanted to travel, I wanted to couch surf, I wanted to get a job. I wanted to explore the world, not by volunteering somewhere because I think that's a bit problematic, but yes, by finding a job, working on a farm. I actually had this job as an Eaton Fives coach lined up in Malaysia, but that didn't end up panning out. I would have liked to go to either Asia or Africa because I haven't been, and those are the continents that I feel I know the least about, and I think I would have grown and learned a lot if I had gone to any of those continents. But that was only 6 months, and that left me with 6 other months from January to whenever I started school, probably in August, to do something else. And those 6-7 months I wanted to spend at home. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to use that time to apply for universities. I wanted to spend time at home, especially after not being at home for around 2.5 years. I wanted to get back into doing sports. I wanted to enjoy eating food in Mexico that I know I really enjoy. I wanted to use that time as a way of saying goodbye, or at least see you later, to my hometown, to my friends, to people I knew there, to my teachers, to my parents, obviously, to my brother, to my grandparents, to everybody I knew. I wanted to use those last 6 months to just be there, be with them, and then be able to leave after that one gap year, those 12 months, having done everything I wanted and I needed to do, and obviously already knowing exactly what I wanted to study and where I was going to study. Now, needless to say, that's not what happened at all between the pandemic. Well, it was mostly the pandemic, to be honest, but yeah, those 12 months all came crashing down. All the very rudimentary planning I had done came crashing down, and instead of graduating around July, I was home on the 1st of April with no intention of going anywhere else, because during a pandemic, traveling abroad when not absolutely necessary seemed not only dangerous but irresponsible. So those first 6 months came tumbling down, and I had no alternative plan, no plan B. And then the latter 6 months would kind of meld and transform and elongate until they covered the actual 18 months that I was gonna spend at home. But I didn't know that yet. So that was one of the negative things of the pandemic, the fact that it really ruined my gap year plans. But there is a silver lining. First of all the time I managed to spend at home was fantastic. I managed to spend so much time and catch up and just get back and recuperate a lot of the time I had felt like I had missed being away, being in a boarding school with my parents, especially with my brother, just being at home. It did make leaving a couple of days ago more difficult than if I had just spent there, I think, 6 months, but it was definitely worth it. Another silver lining of the pandemic for me and for my gap year plans was that I was forced to stay at home because traveling was not going to happen. In the end, that ended up being a good thing because it meant that I wasn't going to spend much money abroad, converting currency, paying for an Airbnb or anything like that. And instead I could save money, which I could later spend on university, on accommodations here, because converting from pesos to euros isn't cheap. going from Mexico to Italy isn't cheap. Finding a place to rent here isn't cheap. 6 years of university isn't cheap. So that was a big difference, and I'm honestly quite glad that that happened, because it makes me being here not only more doable, but actually possible. Since I didn't know what I wanted to study, I thought a good way to find out was to take some massive open online courses or MOOCs. I took 4. One about the environment, one about nursing, one about law and politics, and one about social psychology. The social psychology one was fascinating. I really enjoyed that, but it's not something I would see my career in. The nursing one was also really fun. The environment one was quite meh. And the most impactful was the law and politics one, because it made me realize that I would absolutely detest being a lawyer. No offense to lawyers, that's just my personal preference. But yeah, it made me realize that that's not something I could do. Eventually, and very serendipitously, I arrived at the conclusion that I want to study medicine. There was not one groundbreaking moment. I wasn't struck by inspiration or anything. It just kind of happened. It was a slow clicking in my mind of, maybe this is what I want to do. So here I am, a few months later, about to start doing it. But then I had to apply. And turns out that applying to university isn't as simple as saying, hey guys, I want to attend your university, send. Turns out it's not that easy, and there are actually a few hoops to jump through and steps to go through and procedures to do and protocols to respect. So that's something I didn't know. And I also didn't know you have to start around 9 months before your actual first day. So I started looking at universities, I started looking at courses at around November is when I started my actual application. Firstly for Humanitas University, and I was going to apply to others, but then I got the scholarship and I got accepted and everything. And that was revolutionary, and I didn't apply to any other universities. But if I had been somewhere abroad, maybe in Malaysia or something, then that discovery of universities, that research, everything I did, all those conversations with my parents would have been much harder. So when I was planning my ideal gap year, I had no idea how complex and how long and how complicated this university application process and choosing was. So I'm really glad that I was able to be at home, and I could do that in the comfort of my own home, with my parents right around the corner, and being okay, hey dad, can I do this? Hey mom, what do you think of this? That really facilitated the process of applying to universities. So I guess those were the biggest and the most impactful ways in which the pandemic changed my gap year, but I managed to turn them into something positive and something good. Then some smaller things that I'm equally grateful for were that one of my friends visited, and she was basically the only friend I saw for most of that time. I did see others, but she was there for 3 weeks, and it was awesome. Then I started this YouTube channel, which has really been impactful in my life, to be honest. I managed to observe and sometimes even participate in a few surgeries, hysterectomies, mastectomies, births, an appendectomy. It was all very instructional, and it made me realize that I do want to become a doctor, and it made me realize that I'm not actually disgusted by blood or by guts or whatever. So that was great, and it was great to know that before I actually started medical school, because I would have hated to start and then a few months in see an anatomy model and faint. I'm sure it'll happen, I'll tell you guys when it does, to somebody else, not to me. But not being that person was really reassuring, and knowing that it's not going to be me that is that person is also really reassuring. Finally, I also picked up a ton of good habits from journaling, editing, obviously filming, managing my time, reading, which I had lost because of the IB, and now I've picked up again, and I'm serious about continuing to read through university, even if it is less, obviously. And writing, which I'm sure is going to be great help when I'm taking hundreds of hours worth of notes, when I'm typing them down on my iPad. I'm sure that's going to be really helpful. But yeah, this gap year was really great. And honestly, if you've stayed until here, I really do think you should subscribe, because this video has been nothing but insight into my gap year. But yeah, as a goodbye, I'd just like to say that while I didn't have the gap year experience that I would have envisioned or that I had planned, I had the gap year experience that I had. And honestly, I think that it was great. I think that my planned, envisioned, imaginary gap year plan would have been fun for some things, like going to teach fives at a school in Malaysia would have been fantastic. But not being home when looking at universities would have been catastrophic. So overall, I don't think it would have ended good. I don't think it would have started this channel, which I'm really happy I did. I wouldn't have done a lot of things I've done, which I'm really happy I have done, which sounds scripted, but we'll get there, I promise. But yeah, cheers, and I'll catch you guys next week.